Welcome to No Holding Back with me, Susan Estridge, the podcast where I bring you the biggest names from the worlds of media, politics, and law. We dive into unfiltered, unapologetic, and insightful conversations. I speak my mind and I encourage my guests to do the same. No topic is off limits as we dive into the issues that shape our world, and boy do we have issues today. Today we're honored to be joined by a guest who's made waves in both the political and media landscapes. He's a former U.S. congressman, a candidate for president, a longtime conservative commentator who, if you ask me, saw the light, and someone who's never held back on sharing his candid thoughts, especially when it's meant to challenge his own party. I'm talking about the one and only Joe Walsh. Joe, you've probably heard of from his days in Capitol Hill. He represented Illinois' 8th Congressional District, but his career has only grown, more dynamic, more interesting ever since. After leaving office, he became a conservative radio host and eventually launched his own hit podcast, the very successful Social Contract with Joe Walsh, where he digs deep into the political and ideological divides with guests from all over the political spectrum. His show has become a space for raw, often surprising conversations that challenge listeners to think beyond party lines. Joe's a regular presence on TV, where he's appeared on networks like CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, an unlikely combination, providing insight and commentary on everything from election dynamics to the latest political controversies. You may have seen him sparring with other guests or even calling out the very people he once aligned with, standing by the belief that American values should come before partisan loyalty. Today, Joe's here to break down the fallout from one of the most incredible is a great word, Jay, elections in recent history. Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. And please tell me what happened on Tuesday.
Well, I'm going to tell you that in a minute, Susan, but I want to first give you a big hug.
It's an honor. I can use one.
Yeah, I'm going to give you one, and it's an honor to be with you. I have so loved and respected you and your career over the years, even when we might have been on the different sides of various issues.
We have been.
You've been a wonderful political mind in this country for so long. Thanks for everything you've done, and it's great to be with you.
So kind, Joe. Thank you so much. But I'm reeling, I have to tell you. Tell me what you think of this week. You were for Trump for a while. You've been on both sides. You endorsed Biden. You endorsed Kamala. What's going on in this country?
I think, Susan, it's a combination of too many Americans, and I don't know, do I have to watch my language?
Not with me.
Thank you. Too many Americans no longer fucking care about what they should care about. So they elected a demagogue, a horrible human being, somebody who is unfit to be president, but they chose that over a Democratic Party that for too long has kind of looked down on average regular voters. At least that's the perception I've heard. So, like, Susan, to me, this was a battle for working class America this week.
Yep.
And the demagogue who lies to working class America defeated the party that has dismissed working class America for too long. And it saddens me.
It saddens me tremendously. What do you mean by dismissed working class America? I mean, there was Kamala. She was out there with Tim Walz. They worked the blue belt, whatever you call it. It's not blue anymore. Yeah. It's red. And they tried. I mean, she had child tax credits and first-time homeowner credits, and she kept campaigning. She spent more time in Pennsylvania than most Pennsylvanians did. And it simply didn't work. I mean, there's no escaping that. Why not?
And Susan, I think we might agree on this. I don't think any of this is Kamala Harris's fault. I thought she ran a brilliant 100-day campaign. My only quibble with her is I wish from day one when she became the nominee, she got out there and started firing right away and got in front of all the media right away. But Kamala ran a great campaign. I really believe that. I think the die was cast. Like, again, Trump has lied and demagogued for 9 years the issues of immigration, the border, crime, and how much stuff costs. And that's all he's done. And so by the time Kamala became the nominee, the die was cast, I think, for working class folks. And they would tell me this: Democrats don't care about immigration. They don't care about the border. They don't care about all these migrants. They're pissed off. And they felt like Democrats weren't listening to them about these issues.
Do you think that's right, Joe? Do you think Democrats had turned their back? I mean, I know lots of Democrats who come from the working class Democratic Party, which used to be the party of the working class. And I don't know what happened. The Democrats somehow became the party of the elite. It used to be the other way around, quite frankly. The Republicans were the elite party, and the Democrats were working class Joe. And we used to wait for the working class vote when the 9-to-5ers, when the white collar vote was all going Republican. What changed? What happened to the Democratic Party? Did it get captured by the caucuses? The identity politics? What do you think?
Well, you're right. And even when I went to Congress 10 to 12 years ago, even then, Republicans generally won suburban college-educated voters.
Right.
As you said, Democrats won the voters without a college degree. This is completely flipped. And I think the reason it's flipped is, and it's the world I come from, I think we're living in a populist moment where average Americans are pissed off at a politics that no longer, they believe, listens to them. And so they're taking it out on all politicians. Along came a demagogue named Donald Trump, who said, I'm going to build a fucking wall. I'm going to keep brown and black people out. And working class America told me, finally, Joe, somebody's listening to me. And then Trump just spewed fear at them to the point where a month ago, right, he said they're eating cats and dogs. And when Donald Trump, Susan, said that in that debate, that Haitian migrants are eating cats and dogs, you and me and everybody who knows better laughed at it and dismissed it and said, what a stupid thing to say. But I got to tell you, after that, I had tons of just regular working class folks say to me, Joe, see, he gets it. Trump understands what's going on. And I would say to them, but Billy, they're not eating cats and dogs. And some would say to me, yeah, they are. But the others would say, I know, Joe, Trump's exaggerating. But here's the point. He cares about immigration. And then they look again at the other side. Biden Harris, for 3.5 years, didn't really give this issue anything. And so I think by the time Kamala Harris became the nominee, the die was cast. I think white progressives, that mindset, I think, is driving too much of the Democratic Party when they've lost touch with what you remember, where the Democrats talked about the price of gas and daycare and just basic bread and butter issues.
You think another Democrat would have done better? I mean, Biden was such an unpopular president. I think Biden, God, I can't believe I'm saying this, actually did a fairly good job on most issues as president. He didn't do well on inflation, obviously, but he did well on climate change. He did well on a lot of international relations issues. Yeah. He did well on economic growth. He did well on manufacturing jobs. I mean, why did Biden go into this election so unbelievably unpopular that Kamala hurt herself, I think, by not separating herself more from Joe Biden?
I don't think any other Democrat could have won. Maybe a 61-year-old Biden could have won again instead of an 81-year-old Biden. I think Biden stuck around, Susan, too long. I wish after the midterms, the successful Democratic midterms, Biden had said, I'm going to keep my word. I'm a bridge. Have at it, Democrats. And let the Democrats have a 2-year primary. But no, I don't think any other Democrat could have won. Because Susan, and again, you're so smart. You may disagree with me.
So are you, Joe.
No, I'm not. I just have a big mouth. I want your brain. We're living in a populist moment. Average people are pissed off. Trump is a demagogue who lies to these people, but I just don't think Democrats understand the populist moment we're living in. Like they like, come on, you're concerned about migrants in your community, or you're angry about that job or that. I wish they listened more to how angry people are. I wish we could see a populist, a righteously angry Democratic candidate. That's what the party needs.
Do you see anybody on the horizon? I mean, what's going to happen when Congress comes back in session? We've got a Republican, looks like a Republican House. We've got a Republican Senate. We've got a Republican president who, I agree with you, is a demagogue. But demagogues do well in populist moments, don't they?
Yes. Completely, Susan. This is made for them. So then, okay, Democrats, you have to choose. Are you going to play the game on the field of play where we're at, or are you going to say we're too smart and good for that? We're going to talk to our MSNBC elites and ignore the populist moment. I don't want a demagogue, but we need a democratic version of a righteous. Well, Susan, I may become a Democrat. I'm never welcome back in my party, my old party. No. And you and I call him a demagogue. He's a fucking authoritarian. He's a dictator. He would love to put people who think like you and me in jail. He's told us that.
I know. He said that out loud. I mean, he said out loud things that in my wildest imagination, I couldn't imagine a presidential candidate saying. The way he talked about retaliation, the way he talked about no more elections. I mean, it's hard to believe how undemocratic he was in his language, but it appealed to people.
It does. And Susan, I voted for Trump in 2016, and I beat myself up every day for that vote.
I'll forgive you.
No, thank you. But because I come from MAGA, I'm a reformed MAGA gangbanger. I got out of the cult.
Right, but you're like a reformed alcoholic who can't stand the sight of alcohol.
Bingo. Exactly. But I still engage with MAGA every single day, these people. And it is, and I'll tell them this, it is a cult. He is their leader. He can do no wrong and say no wrong. Now, that's his hardcore base. What's worrying to Democrats is a lot of MAGA adjacent people and independents voted for Trump. They just didn't see, Susan, part of the problems, you know this better than anybody. There's been no fucking bully pulpit for the last 4 years. Joe Biden has had a very successful presidency. Very successful. He's been unable to communicate that for 4 years because he's too old. Susan, he needed to come out the day after he got,
It's too old, is that it, you think? He's just too old to communicate? Because he's done a terrible job of communicating.
Yeah, and we're all different. We all age differently. Bernie Sanders is older, and he's still got it.
Nancy
Pelosi, who I went at when I was in Congress. I love Nancy. She's older than Biden, and she can still communicate. Joe Biden can't. Biden, Susan, needed to sit the American people down right after he got elected. And he needed to paint a picture of what economically the next 4 years are going to look like coming out of COVID. He never did that. He should have said, we're all in this together. It's going to be tough. It's going to be rough. Shit is going to be too expensive for a couple years, but we're all in this together. And then every quarter, Biden should have come out and had a fireside chat about economically how we're doing. Because then the perception, the narrative became that we're doing bad, when we've done better than every other industrialized country coming out of COVID. But nobody could.
Biden just couldn't make that point.
Boom.
He couldn't do it, and neither could the Democrats. And by the time he got around to trying, it was too late. I don't know. I just find it incredibly frustrating. But look, Joe, it's not just the MAGA people in the cult. Everybody voted for Biden. I was joking the other night on Black Radio that you could blame everybody. You could blame white women, you could blame black men, you could blame Hispanics. I mean, everybody was voting for Trump. Women were voting for Trump. I mean, what was going on there? Are we all racist and sexist?
No, and as you know, and my God, I hope that's not the takeaway of the Democratic Party is that this MAGA thing, or everybody who voted for Trump, we lost because of racism or sexism. That's not the case. I want to be careful with how well Trump did with everybody else. I want to wait for a month until we have the final numbers. Susan, it looks to me like Trump did really way better with Latino men.
Yep.
It looks like Kamala Harris held her own and did exactly the same as Biden did with black men and women. It looks like, weirdly, Trump did better with Gen Z. And I think a lot of this is young men who listen to Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson, and they're alienated and alone. They latched on to Trump. And Susan, I don't see like women came out because of Roe. Like, I don't think that materialized.
No, that didn't. Why not, Joe? I mean, I think Democrats were counting on the fact that women had come out for the various abortion referendum, and we saw states like Kansas vote pro-choice. And I think Democrats overestimated the powerful impact of abortion, which is really sad to me. I mean, they just overestimated the extent to which young women would come out. They just didn't come out, and I'm not sure I know why.
They didn't. Susan, I read something really interesting this morning. Kamala Harris got more votes, it looks like, in every battleground state than Joe Biden got. Donald Trump got way more votes in every battleground state than he got 4 years ago.
Right.
But Kamala in the battleground states did better than Biden, got more votes. But I think part of what happened was the popular vote is going to be close because I think a lot of Dems in blue states just didn't come out to vote. Which, by the way, Susan, I'm a conservative. We should get rid of the Electoral College tomorrow.
Yeah, fat chance that's going to happen. That's never going to happen, is it?
Never.
Never.
Revolution.
I students write papers about it, and finally I said, after about 20 years of papers, I said, I don't want to read any more papers about the Electoral College. It's not going to change. And in this election, it wouldn't have made any difference if it did, because Donald Trump, succeeded in places he shouldn't have succeeded. I mean, why did he win Pennsylvania?
Okay, so look at Pennsylvania. The data will show, Susan, that Kamala got more votes in Pennsylvania than Biden did, but she still lost because Trump got a lot more votes than he got 4 years ago. They made a conscious effort to get out people who'd never voted. They went after young men for months to come out and vote, and I think a lot of that materialized. And then, Susan, I got to be honest, I think Trump's an existential threat to our democracy. I will never stop saying that. Yeah. I believe that average Americans are capable of caring about the price of eggs and caring about the threat of authoritarianism. The price of eggs, that was real to them. I guess we didn't do a good job of making the threat of authoritarianism real to them.
What should we have done differently, Joe? If you were running Kamala's campaign, what would you have done differently than she did? Break with Biden?
I'd be a lousy political advisor because once Kamala,
smart.
Once she became the nominee, if I were the nominee, I'd have given a speech that first day. And I never wanted Donald Trump normalized. I would have gone after him from day one. I would have been honest and looked at the American people. I would have said, we fucked up. President Biden and I fucked up. We fucked up on the border. We should have paid more attention to immigration. And I know you're worried about the price of eggs and butter, but let's be real. We're doing really well economically. Let's have a grown-up conversation about that. If I were her, Susan, I would have been, she only had 100 days. I would have been in our faces every day. If I were Kamala, I would have gone on Joe Rogan. I would have sat down with Tucker Carlson. I would have sat down with Hannity. I would have gone anywhere and everywhere. She only had 100 days. And make the case that this guy is un-American and I fucking care about you. And I'll admit we made mistakes, but damn it, we can't go there. But that's why I didn't run. I'm not running for president.
Well, I wish you were. I have to say, I think somebody who had said that could have beaten Trump, but I don't know.
Yes.
I just don't know. I
Well,
don't know. Look at young people. They're so angry and
Yes.
they're so depressed about their future. And I talked to my kids. One voted for Kamala and was deep in Kamala land, and my son just liked what Trump had to say about things. He just thought he got it. And I know that there were other people who didn't. I told him, he accused me of hiding his absentee ballot because, I didn't want him to vote for Trump. And, right? It just never came in the mail. What can I say? Um,
Susan,
do what you can.
Yeah, I do. The last year, I've done a lot of speaking on college campuses, and young people don't look at Trump like you and I do. They laugh at Trump, but
They do.
They think Trump is just part of a broken politics. They would tell me, Joe, both parties suck. Biden's
Right.
too old. I'm sick of career politicians. Baba, Trump, ha ha ha. I think he's a threat to democracy. They just laughed at him. Um, so what they want is a candidate who doesn't look and sound like a politician.
I was going to say the same thing. Kamala sounded like a politician. I have to admit, she did sound like a politician, like a well-rehearsed, well-scripted, carefully prepared politician.
And that's, by the way, that's what Hillary sounded like in 16.
Oh, of course she did. Of course she did. But she had her own baggage to deal with, which Kamala didn't have. I mean, she had she had James Comey and the emails and the tapes and all of that.
Yes. And so Trump has never sounded like a politician, and they like that, and they don't care that he's a criminal. They don't care he's a pathological liar. They don't care that he thinks he's above the law. Everything that you and I recoil against, they just say he's not a typical politician.
What are the people, some of the people around him, Joe, what are they going to do? Are they going to let him get away with murder?
Yeah. And by the way, Susan, most of the people around him didn't think he was going to win. They were as surprised as Democrats were that he won like this. They had no clue. They had no ground game. No. This was all just organic. Pissed off people voting. The people around Trump thought he was going to lose, and they were starting to backstab each other these last few weeks.
They were leaking like sieves about how he wasn't following campaign strategy. Yeah. He was going off on these tangents, and on the rallies, he would get rid of his scripts, and they were, stabbing each other in the back. And I think the people around Kamala thought she had it in the bag.
Yeah, they did. They did, because they had a typical political mindset, and they did not see kind of the energy and the anger out there. And again, I don't blame her, Susan. I thought she really grew as a candidate. I fell in love with her. I don't believe this is fault. By the way, you probably like Biden more than I do. Biden had a successful 4 years, but Biden really screwed up. He got out of this thing too late.
Oh, he definitely did. We needed an open primary. We needed to pick a candidate. Some people are saying to me now, we needed to pick a white man to take him on. We were just asking too much. Do you buy that?
No, bullshit. And I hope, because it's not the color, it's not the sex, it's the voice. You give me a righteously populist Democrat, I don't give a damn what gender or color they are. That's what America is yearning for right now. Don't give me a slick, polished politician. Pete Buttigieg is too rehearsed.
Gavin Newsom is too rehearsed. I mean, Gavin Newsom in this state.
No, forget it. I don't see that Democrat out there right now.
Who do you see out there, Joe? I mean, who's going to lead the Democratic Party now?
Well, it's going to be a real battle, isn't it? And so it's going to get ugly. You got Shapiro, you got JB Pritzker in my home state of Illinois, who's dying to run for president.
Right.
Well, I don't know, Susan. What's Kamala going to do? She may want to. Is she done? She may want to get in there.
Done.
You
don't think she's done? She lost. I mean, in some sense, if you can't beat Donald Trump, okay, that says something, and it said something about Hillary, whose career never took off again, let's face it. It says something about Kamala, who's maybe going to run for governor of California. I don't know what she's going to do, but she's got 4 years and she doesn't have the mouthpiece to take on Trump. I just don't think she's got it. She's not the Democrat you're talking about right now.
No. And maybe there's a Democratic governor out there who's a piss and vinegar guy who can talk straight to the American people. There'll be a battle. I don't see anyone yet. No one speaks the way I want a Democrat to speak.
No, they don't. They just don't. And I don't know why that is, because that's the Democratic Party I grew up with. It was the Democratic Party that was out there for working people.
Susan, we need your party back because they're afraid. They're afraid of offending. And I say woke. I don't always say it critically. Woke can be a very good thing. They're afraid of alienating their progressive base. So they're afraid of talking about issues like gender and Muslims and crime and immigrants. So they cede all of that turf to the Republicans. I want a Democrat to engage in the culture war because I think most Americans agree with where Democrats are on these culture war issues. Most Americans are tolerant. They're not where MAGA is.
I know, but they voted that way. I mean, I still can't get my head around this notion that we lost everybody. We lost people. We knew we were going to lose MAGA, and we knew MAGA was intolerant. But why did people who had so much to gain from the Kamala Harris presidency vote against her? I mean, this is the guy, Biden was the guy who wanted to help these kids pay their student loans, and they blocked him, and the students didn't seem to care. I don't know, the climate change and the environment. My kids are really scared, the kids I talk to are scared about this planet and the future we're leaving them, and we're putting it in the hands of somebody who doesn't believe in climate change.
Susan, somebody smart's got to tell me why young people didn't come out on Tuesday, because they didn't. If young people had come out in huge numbers, she would have won. Right. I don't understand why they didn't. I know how cynical they are because I speak to them, but oh my God, Donald Trump against Kamala Harris? That should have been easy for young people.
I know. I mean, she went on Saturday Night Live, for goodness sake. She tried. I mean, she tried to get young people. She had all the entertainers. She had Taylor Swift. All those Swifties didn't come out. They just didn't.
This was a very weird thing. We've never seen this. She ran a 100-day campaign. Joe Biden 4 months ago was the nominee, and then he showed everybody at a debate he's too old. This has been a whirlwind. And so I'm hesitant to draw real firm conclusions because we ain't never been through something like this. But what you and I do know, Susan, is Democrats did not come out for her like they should have. And the party needs to figure out why.
It's going to be ugly. What's he going to get done? What is he going to do? He's best friends with Putin. Does that mean Ukraine goes down the tubes? I mean, I heard Putin lavishing praise on Donald Trump. It made my skin crawl. I mean, what's going to happen there, Joe?
I think we have to believe that he's going to do what he said he was going to do. So who should be most afraid? Every Ukrainian soldier. Because I think on day one, Trump's going to try to end that war, and that means do what Putin wants. Fuck him. I think Trump's going to try to get us out of NATO. I think Donald Trump, Susan, is going to move on this mass deportation thing.
Is he going to do it, Joe? I mean, what's he going to do? He's going to start separating families and saying, well, the father goes, the mother stays, the children stay, the parents don't. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to separate families and send them home to a place they've never been that isn't their home?
Susan, watch JD Vance. I know him pretty well. I don't. I mean, only in your spare time. He is utterly fraudulent, but he's a smart guy.
Yep.
And he is going to be the brains behind him and people around him, this deportation thing. They believe, Susan, it's a winner politically for them. I completely disagree, and America should fight this with everything we've got, but they're going to move on that. And then Trump's going to move on Project 2025. He's going to move on strengthening the executive branch and trying to turn the presidency into a dictatorship. There's already talk, Susan, of Trump going to demand loyalty oaths from everyone he brings on board and from all top agency heads. That's anathema to America, but he's going to do shit like this.
He's not going to be a bipartisan president, that's for sure.
Not at all.
Not looking for anybody who doesn't agree on the bottom line. And he can dismantle the executive branch and handicap it. What's he going to do to the Justice Department? Now I got you laughing.
No, because you're right. He's going to weaponize it. He will put his personal lawyer, will be the Attorney General, because Donald Trump, Susan, believes in his head that the Attorney General should be his personal lawyer.
He does.
He believes that. That's a Roy Cohn thing. He really believes that. So he's going to politicize the Justice Department. Susan, I'm not Liz Cheney, but I'm not that far down. Trump has an enemies list. And people like Liz and my friend Adam Kinzinger, we know we're on that list. I have no doubt that he's going to try to pull whatever levers he can pull at to go after his enemies. He's all about retribution. This is scary. It's a scary time.
It's a scary time, and how do you stop him? Elon Musk, Joe, what do you think of him? He came out the big winner in this, if you ask me.
Think about that. Susan, think about that. That's why, I believe we don't understand really. It's like we're at war right now. Something's happening to us in slow motion, and the American people don't get it. The wealthiest guy on the planet who owns that platform, he went full in for one of these presidential candidates. I mean, that's scary shit. Yes. And he is a purveyor of disinformation. He is a purveyor of lies. But him and RFK Jr. and Tucker Carlson, these are the new role models that young men especially love.
I know they do. What is that about, Joe?
Boom! It's about punching you, Susan. It's about fighting the people you don't like, the enemy. Revenge. They feel like they've been ignored, young men. All of this gender stuff, and all we care about is transgenders and women and black people and brown people. What about us young white men? Nobody cares about us anymore. This is the stuff they tell me. And Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson speak to these men. And they radicalize these men.
And what does Joe Walsh do about that? How do you stand up to that?
So here's my dilemma, Susan. I'm in the political wilderness. I've been here for a while. The Republican Party is now MAGA forever. That's permanent. I can never go back there. People in my space, Susan, you know a lot of us, the never Trumpers. Right. Start a third party or bullshit. You're not going to start.
That's not going to work.
No. So so we either figure out a way to be an effective resistance together, or we have to join the Democratic Party and play with the only other game in town and kick the Democratic Party's ass to get them aware of how to fight and how to talk to these people. I'm trying to figure out what I can do, because part of me wants to quit, Susan, because I'm not 40
anymore.
No,
you can't quit, Joe. This is the time.
Susan, you and I are not young anymore.
I know, I've noticed that. I have noticed. I remember things that, happened 40 years ago when I was an adult then.
I don't want to just scream about Trump for 4 years again. I don't want to do that. I want to do something constructive.
Right. So what is there constructive? I'm supposed to sit and write a column today. And I have to tell you, I woke up this morning and I thought, what have I got to say? How do you be constructive in this situation? How do you avoid just dumping on Trump again and saying over and over again, the guy's a demagogue, he's dangerous, yes. What are we going to do about it? Where's our leadership? Where's the Joe Walsh inside the Democratic Party who's going to stand up and say to these young men, you were wrong and just watch? He's not Susan first.
Susan, there's your column. Where are the Joe Walshes in the Democratic Party? No one can critique the Democratic Party better than the beautiful woman I'm speaking with right now. That's your role. That's your column for the next 6 months, is trying to help the Democratic Party learn from what the fuck happened and what they need to do to compete with what this thing is. You can do that better than anybody.
Well, you can do it too, Joe. We're going to need your voice out there. And you're going to speak to those young men, because things are going to happen here that are bad for them. I don't know how to get to them. You do. What would you tell a young man today who voted for Trump?
What would I tell a young person who voted for Trump?
Yeah.
You better pay attention and watch what he does. He's going to hire this guy named RFK Jr., who may get rid of vaccines, who may get fluoride out of water. You may not think that's a...
What is with RFK Jr., Joe?
Again, it's all part of this. It's this authoritarian bent that MAGA has gone. My party, Susan, my former party, has given up on democracy. They want strong men to rule them. They think Trump is a strong man. They think RFK Jr. is a strong man. They think Tucker and Elon, they think they're strong men. And way too many Republicans right now want to be led by a strong man.
Are there any Republicans who are going to stand up to Trump?
No.
You see what happens when you stand up to Trump? You're sent out to the wilderness.
Yeah, no.
It's just going to get in line in the House and Senate and say, whatever you say, boss.
Yes, because Susan, paradoxically, now that Trump won and he's been validated, all of the Republicans who like him in the House and Senate, now they're in line now to bow at his feet. Because now, like, they didn't want him to win. People like John Thune didn't want Trump to win.
Right.
But now he now is the man. This is the party. So Trump now is going to own all Republicans in Congress. All of them. There will be no voices, anti-Trump Republican voices in Congress anymore.
It's a scary thought. And I haven't even gotten to the federal judiciary, which is, my bailiwick, which is going to be lost forever. I mean, he's going to have so many appointments, and they're all going to be ideologues. And, I used to teach constitutional law. It doesn't exist anymore. I mean, It's unity law. It's a court that has looked at the election results and knows which way the wind is blowing. And I'm just worried about constitutional rights and the Fundamental Bill of Rights and free speech and, political advocacy and all of that. And I don't know what to do about it.
Susan, you're so right. And as I tell young men and all of these other Republicans, if you vote for a strong man, if you put a strong man in office, one day that strong man's coming after you. Right. He will come after you and your rights and your livelihood. And
how long will the cycle be, Joe? I mean, is this going to cycle itself out in 2 years? Or are we just in for 4 years of this in a Republican Party that's never going to come back?
So much of that, Susan, depends on what the Democrats do. If they don't learn from this and very quickly get their fucking act together and realize why they lost, Trump and MAGA could have a good long run here. Remember, he's only serving a term, but let's all use our imagination. It's not beyond the pale that he'd try to stay for more than one term. I know that sounds crazy, but 15 years ago, did anybody think? Yeah. Did anybody think 20 years ago that an American president would lose an election and then commit crimes trying to overthrow it? No. So who knows what Trump might do, but he's got 4 years. JD Vance is his heir apparent. MAGA loves JD Vance.
Yep.
So unless we get our act together, they could have a good long run. By the way, Susan, Trump is inheriting a great economy.
Yep. Yep. He's inheriting a great economy. They cut interest rates again. He's going to take credit for anything good that happens.
Yes.
And he's going to tell these folks that he delivered. He delivered on the promise.
Because remember, Susan, he lies as he breathes. So in a month, in a couple weeks, he'll come out and say, the economy is now doing great because I won. Right. He'll say that, which is a lie. but his people will believe it.
Joe, you are such an important voice out there. I can only say that, keep talking, keep reminding people of the social contract, keep giving us some hope, because, you're the most hopeful person I think I've talked to this week, and you're not very hopeful.
Susan Estrich, I love you and respect the hell out of you, lady.
Well, I feel the same way towards you, Joe, and there's not much of that in politics these days.
No.
I go back to the days when I used to have Republican friends who we'd have a drink with at the end of the day and realize that we were all on the same team. And now I don't feel like I'm on the same team with these people. I just don't. And I don't know what to my mom. Joe, it has been such a pleasure. I've got to tell everybody, listen to Joe's show, listen to his podcast, read what he has to say, and keep his voice strong. You've been listening to No Holding Back with me, Susan Estrich. I want to take another moment just to thank Joe Walsh for an inspiring, candid, thoughtful, honest conversation, and for being a voice in the wilderness right now, taking on the Trump administration. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch every episode on our YouTube channel. Please leave a rating and review on your chosen platform. It really helps us reach more listeners and keep the conversation going. Follow us on X, or Twitter as we used to call it, at No Holding Back FM. And for my weekly column, visit our website, estrichgolden.com. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to Joe Walsh, and I'll see you next time on No Holding Back.